Thank you very much for the introduction. Dear colleagues, it's a pleasure being here. I was very pleased when Andris Vilks invited me to give this talk. I have to say that I did do some thinking, because this is not my normal speech. So I tried to combine quite many efforts which are happening in Europe and in Finland. I hope I succeeded in my try. So let's see later on what you think. First of all, I sort of started to remember when I started Baltic collaboration. So this happened quite early in my career. Actually, I was then working at the Agricultural Library in Finland, and during those times we had very active Nordic and Nordic-Baltic collaboration. And so the internet was new, we had CD-ROMs, so it was very much about training librarians on how to cope with this change, as also the previous speaker was mentioning change. So with my Danish colleague, we made a tournée in Baltic countries, really visiting many libraries of that time. And this Baltic collaboration now is happening more at the European level. So Andris Vilks has been the board member of LIBER for 6 years, and we have had very good discussions there during these years. So really collaboration is very important. So my agenda for today is here. So first of all, I'm going to inform you about our national digital library in Finland and what kind of connections that has to European policy making. Then one of our services we develop at the National Library of Finland, that is Finna. Also, I'm going to talk about 2 European-level expert groups nominated by the European Commission, the Open Science Policy Platform and the Digital Cultural Heritage Expert Groups. Some words about LIBER, so how LIBER can support our libraries, and then conclusions. My intention really is to try to show how European, national and local level activities are interlinked. Perhaps this is sort of the main outline of my talk here. So first, the National Digital Library, which was took about 10 years, so quite a long initiative. And behind the National Digital Library, there were European Council conclusions. The first one was published in 2006, and the focus of that was on digitization and online accessibility, as well as digital preservation, development of national strategies, development of European Digital Library, and national and international collaboration. In a way, this was the starting point of many activities in Finland, but I guess also in several other European countries. There were several other Council conclusions, 2008, 10, 12, and I tried to pick the main points related to my talk today of these Council conclusions. One major point was the decision to create Europeana. The European Digital Library Foundation was formed in 1927. Europeana prototype was published in 2008. And the mission of Europeana at that time was Europe's cultural heritage at the click of the mouse. Europeana development was funded via several programs, so e-content, and also the 7th Framework Program for Research and Technological Development. Collaboration with member states was in the heart of this idea. Digital Agenda for Europe was published in 2011. And during those days, I also joined Europeana Foundation board, so I sort of was involved in the development of Europeana and know the thinking behind Europeana those days. Idea was to promote incorporation of digital cultural heritage materials into Europeana. This was the starting point. Very early also the focus was on interoperability. And if we think of digital work, of course, world interoperability, and nowadays even more semantic interoperability, this is really important. We can't have sort of any cross-border or any national collaboration of digital media if we don't follow interoperability standards. And also one of the aims was to promote improvement of portals incorporating national content. So it was really kind of inviting to develop your national solutions. And the last one was to raise awareness of Europeana around Europe. So these were the backgrounds of our national development. I have the key person here in the audience who knows everything about the political background in Finland. Perhaps we will hear about this later today. But really this was what I picked from the Council conclusions. The National Digital Library in Finland was initiated in 2008, so quite quickly after the first Council conclusion. And as a summary, it can be said that the National Digital Library has been the biggest cooperation project between libraries, archives, and museums in Finland. And this is still true today. The initiative developed availability and usability of cultural heritage materials, preservation of digital cultural heritage materials, digitization, as well as collaboration between libraries, archives, and museums. At the end of the initiative in 2017, an external evaluation was carried on. The results of this evaluation were overall positive. The project managed to achieve its goals well. Finna, in particular, was very successful. Also, the digital preservation services achieved its goals well. These two practical level services, Finna and the preservation service, they are very different in type, so it takes more time for the digital preservation service really to get more organization to preserve the materials. So the development of Finna has been much quicker because it's so different. So the National Digital Library grew to become a major repository, service entity, operating model, and center for expertise. So in addition of developing these two services, Finna and the preservation service, a main outcome was the improved and continuing collaboration between libraries, archives, and museums. So if we think about culture, very often we think that, for example, we need to create open science culture or open digital world culture. Changing the culture always is really challenging. It always takes a lot of time. And when we started this National Digital Library in Finland, only libraries had the tradition of collaboration. Museums, typically, they discussed among themselves, and archives as well. So there was not that much discussion between the borders of these different sectors. And after this National Digital Library, really the discussion across these domains is natural. It's happening all the time. We have different fora where we have the possibilities to collaborate. it's not intention that you would see anything of this, but this is to show that a lot happened during those years. At the top, there are some political strategies and developments and decisions, and behind the bar, there are different working groups and such, which sort of were related to the National Digital Library. So it was a comprehensive initiative. So the initiative ended in 2017. But when the external evaluation was carried out and many of the stakeholders were interviewed, they were worried that the collaboration would stop, because sort of we were used to have this kind of coordinated discussion and planning future together. And the Ministry of Culture, they decided to launch a new initiative, Our Digital Cultural Heritage, and this initiative started in 2018. And the goals of the initiative are to maintain services that improve the availability and digital preservation of information resources, so kind of continue Finna and the preservation service and how they develop, promote collaboration between archives, libraries and museums, and enhance their expertise, and improve interoperability between different information and data systems. So this was one of the messages from the council conclusions in 2006, and sort of we have kept sort of the discussion about the importance of interoperability, and today, personally, I'm speaking very much about semantic interoperability. So the Ministry of Education and Culture is responsible for the policies of this initiative, and the National Library is responsible for communication and promotion of this initiative. So one of the practical level services is Finna. So it started at the user interface of the National Digital Library. It's a national service for these three domains: archives, libraries and museums. It's mainly funded by the Ministry of Education and Culture. It is maintained and developed at the National Library. Here I want to mention that we also develop several other national level infrastructures which also support the development of Finna. I'd like to mention our national ontologies, which are really a basic key infrastructure for Finland, but many other solutions. In a way, all these services support each other. Finna, in a way, resembles Europeana, but still it's something else. So we could say that there are two sides of Finna. If you want to go and have a look at the portal, the address is finna.fi. It's easy to find. It is a service combining the materials of libraries, archives and museums. It provides the national view of Finnish cultural heritage materials. In a way, this is similar to Europeana. The other side of Finna is that it is a platform as a service. So Finna offers tools to build your own interface. So in Finland, we can see that all higher education institutions, many museums, many archives, they want to have their own view of the content. And they can tailor-made it to meet the needs of their own users. So in a way, this is supporting self-service. And today, I believe this is a very, very important thing, that we can create such infrastructures which support self-service of different kind of users. We don't know who are using our services. So we enable end-use citizens, but also we enable small startups, for example, to utilize our services. So Finna at the moment contains 15 million objects. Of those, about 2 million are online. And at the moment, we have close to 400 organizations who are using Finna, whose material are seen via Finna portal. As I mentioned, it's easy to make your own view of the content. So at the moment we have about 80 user interfaces. So all higher education institutions, for example, have their own, many museums have their own view. And also you can see the trend of usage. So really Finna is used a lot, and usage is growing every day, I could say. Some words about the working methods. User-centered design has been very much in the center of the development of this service, and also collaboration with our stakeholders. We have different fora where we collaborate. So what comes to user-centered design, so we run usability tests and user studies. We want to embed this usability thinking into the normal work processes. So this is an integral part of developing Finna. And as I mentioned, we have different groups, sort of higher level steering groups, but also sort of more practical level groups where we collaborate and discuss with our members. And also development is openly documented. I think I didn't mention that Finna is based on open source. So we have the keys in our hands, so we can develop it based on the needs of our users. And this is part of Finna team at the end of last year. And the Finna project manager is the gentleman sitting in the front row, and other people there. Okay, now I move to Digital Cultural Heritage Expert Group. So it's nominated by the European Commission. It has its offices in Luxembourg. And the aim is to assist the European Commission in implementing existing EU legislation, programs and policies. It coordinates with member states and gives guidance to Europeana. So quite strong focus at the moment is on Europeana. So it gives guidance regarding general objectives, priorities, and also discusses the appropriate level of funding, which is proposed to the Connecting Europe facility, where the funding currently comes from. So it's a forum for cooperation between member states and the European Commission. And the themes which are discussed are digitization, online accessibility of cultural material, and digital preservation. So pretty much sort of the same idea that was started in 2006, sort of this continues, it takes new forms, but still sort of the same kind of discussion. The expert group also gives guidance on Europeana's annual work. And recently, a subgroup consisting of 12 members has been formed. And they have possibilities to meet more often, also meet more online, and really dig deeper into the questions related to Europeana. One important and interesting point today is that they are supporting the development of Europeana strategy. And this has a very direct link to our national work, as we are working on Finna strategy at the moment. So of course we listen what kind of ideas comes via the Europeana work, and then we discuss it at home. So if these ideas are proper also for us. So all the time there are quite many links between the European and national and more local level of thinking and development. I'm sure you all know Europeana, so I only have one slide about this. So as mentioned before, it's funded by the Connecting Europe facility. So it brings Europe's digitized cultural heritage material online. It promotes cross-border visibility and offers solutions for the trans-European interoperability and accessibility of digital resources, improve the conditions for reuse, and facilitates utilization of digital cultural content. There is another high-level expert group nominated by the European Commission. This is the Open Science Policy Platform. It also advises the Commission, but this time it's on open science policy. It supports to practically implement the European Open Science Policy Agenda. The OSPP consists of 25 high-level representatives of European open science environment. Here you can see the list of stakeholders. So we have universities, research organizations, scientific societies, research funding organizations, citizen science organizations, publishers, open science platforms and libraries. LIBER is the only library organization represented here, and I have had the honor to representing the whole library network in Europe in this group. Here you can see the list of our priorities in this work. I don't have now the time to go more in details. There are some links to quite important reports if you have the time later on to have a look. I would say it's worth having a look on those. So these two expert groups are nominated by the European Commission. The other one has focus on digital cultural heritage, and the other one on open science. Also, there are subgroups which support the work of these high-level expert groups. The mandate of these groups is to advise in policy making, involve stakeholders, outreach, so pretty same kind of topics. And related to both infrastructures are developed Europeana and, for example, European Open Science Cloud. So the mission of these groups has a lot in common. Development of shared infrastructures, use of standards, interoperability, fair data, citizen science. Also skills development, raising awareness, advocacy. So both foster the digital development. At the moment, there is not too much discussion between these two groups. I have several times asked during both meetings sort of what kind of collaboration there could be. But at this point, it looks that it's two different lines. But still, we have a lot in common. And perhaps we should, all of us, have a look on both initiatives, sort of what these are striving and how we can sort of build our expertise based on the expertise of both expert groups. I have a couple of slides still. This is about LIBER. LIBER is the largest Europe's largest library network for research libraries. It covers about 440 libraries in Europe. I checked in Latvia, we have three libraries who are members of LIBER, and the National Library is one. And some information in a very brief form about the strategy and vision of LIBER. So we focus very much on open access, on fair research data, and the fair is sort of a connecting element between the cultural heritage and open science, the transparent research cycle, and also research infrastructures that are collaborative and that take in notion the needs of different disciplines. And also we have in focus the digital cultural heritage of tomorrow. So we are building the future cultural heritage now. Sort of the digital information is one part of our digital cultural heritage in the future. So LIBE supports libraries in many ways. Here is the list of some methods. So training, guiding, advocating, and networking. I see here some LIBE colleagues who are very active at LIBE. So this is to conclude my talk. Also, the previous speaker spoke about discussion. In my wording, it's collaboration. So all stakeholders have to be active in improving access to digital cultural heritage materials and make open science happen. This is all about collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. I think it was very interesting, and I think you portrayed very nicely. Do you hear me?
Can I?
Yeah, you can. Please come downstairs. I think you portrayed really nicely that any kind of change or any kind of awareness about what is happening actually takes quite a lot of time. It doesn't happen in a day. It takes more really debates, discussions, looks, also mistakes to learn from and just to bring about. I wanted to ask whether any of you has any questions or comments. I would be gladly giving you microphone to somebody else, not asking question myself. You have a question, please.
Yes, Robert Zepp from Rostock. We saw in the beginning that there are people from libraries, archives, and museums here, and at least in Germany, but I think probably also in Finland, these institutions have their own cultures. And in the digital age, we need to be able to work together and to bring our, to coordinate our cultures, I'll say. Could you tell us more about the experience in Finland, how that played out?
Yeah, I would say that the National Digital Library was one very important instrument really to start the dialogue between these sectors and also start to develop the common culture. And actually it really got speed when we had the first prototype of Finna, when sort of archives, libraries and museums, they saw what there was. So they noticed, for example, if the metadata was not good enough, so it came visible. So there were quite many efforts really to improve the metadata. Also, coordinated by the ministry, we developed the enterprise architecture for libraries, archives and museums, which has been really powerful tool. I could have mentioned that too. And for example, it mentions sort of what kind of standards are kind of allowed at libraries, archives and museums. And as you noticed, we started this initiative in 2008. So many of our organizations were changing their background systems. And as we had the enterprise architecture saying to them, okay, you need to pay attention to this and that when you purchase the new system. So this really supported the development of really the whole network. And I think it has been sort of, we have been working together more than 10 years now, and we meet often. We have the enterprise architecture. My team at National Library supports them, so they meet often, and really they try to answer to the needs of different sectors. We try to keep the balance between libraries, archives, and museums. It takes time, but I think sort of we have a very different network today than we were when we started in 2008. I hope this answered your question.
Thank you very much. I had a similar question and do want to ask. I know we have to run for coffee, but I did have one question because I think it is, I think you showed it very, really, you pointed at it. What do you think is the phenomenon behind the libraries that they are becoming? It's not becoming a, I don't know, National Digital Archive or National Digital Museum, but exactly library. What is the phenomenon why libraries are the force that is now really actually in the position of taking the lead? Also on European level, the debates happen a lot among them. What do you think is this momentum? Why is it happening? Have you had this insight?
So that it's the library who coordinated this initiative.
And not like archive or museum or somebody else. How does it happen?
Yeah, but perhaps it was sort of the tradition of collaboration. At least in Finland, libraries, and especially higher education libraries, university libraries to be precise, they had the long tradition of collaboration. And in the museum and archive sector, no, sort of it's quite new. So very many of those organizations, they worked sort of within their own organization or within a smaller circle, but not sort of covering, for example, the whole museum sector or whole archive sector. So the collaboration, of course, is one, and always you need to have some people who have the vision for the future, really to start sort of with something new. This has happened at European level and also in many European countries.
Yes, it's exactly also my observation. Thank you very much, Christina. Your speech was excellent again as well, and I think it was very nice to reflecting on many things that's happening in our countries when we are watching your presentation and seeing how we have reacted to those things happening in Europe. So thank you very much. Let's give her a hand.